Oh, Marvin, Marvin. I just hear your name and it makes me smile. Marvin Hamlish.
He heard music in everything. The raindrops, the clock strike, someone knocking at the door.
I feel that if you opened up his vein, blood wouldn't have come out, musical notes would have come out.
Every impression I had of Marvin was that we're doing something fabulous and fun. He was having such a wonderful time.
He came in with a bang. He was at the top, and he stayed at the top.
He has 4 Grammys, 3 Oscars, 2 Golden Globes, a Tony, a Pulitzer Prize, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Just the range of ability. I mean, ideas seem to just literally be at his fingertips. And he just loved doing it so much. And that's contagious.
When you see something and you don't know how it's done, that's what dreams are made of. That's what art is. That's what inspires someone to be an artist.
If Marvin walked into a room and there was a piano in it, just wait. Something wonderful is about to happen.
How did it all begin? Did you always want to write?
I always want to write. I wanted to be actually the son of J. Paul Getty, but that didn't work out because my mother never met the man. Way before Hitler got into power, my father, he saw what the problem was going to be. And he very smartly said, we got to get out of here.
He would look at me when he'd visit my grandparents, and he would say, do you know how lucky you are to have grandparents? I never knew my grandparents because he lost his grandparents in the Holocaust. I think all of this made a huge impact. He valued friendship and family and people over everything else. It's also why Marvin was so grateful for the things that he did have and never took it for granted.
Marvin's parents, Uncle Max and Aunt Lily, personified Vienna. Uncle Max was a professional accordionist who played at Viennese balls. He was kind of a throwback already, like they belonged in the court of Franz Josef rather than Broadway or the Catskills. Aunt Lily, she invented helicopter mothering. Aunt Lily would not allow Marvin to fly to Los Angeles because airplanes have been known to crash, incinerating all the occupants therein. So Friday afternoon, Aunt Lily takes Marvin to Grand Central Terminal, gives him his supper in a brown paper bag, and kisses him goodbye. She then prepares to fly out to Chicago the next day. She was allowed to fly. If her plane crashed, it'd be like Dag Hammarskjöld. She died in service. So Saturday morning, when the train pulled into the station in Chicago, there was the same mommy who kissed him goodbye yesterday at Grand Central, waiting for him on the platform with his lunch in a brown paper bag.
Immigrant parents who come out of Europe because of the war, who obviously want their son to have every possible thing that they never had, you get a sense of how much is riding on what it is that you're going to do. You can't help but feel it.
He grew up in a very small apartment on the West Side. He shared a bedroom with his sister. The piano was sort of cramped in there.
If we played Cowboys and Indians, we had background music because Marvin would run to the piano and right away have cowboy music on the piano. So we knew early on that this was who Marvin was going to be.
How young was he when you thought he had any musical ability?
8 months.
8 months?
8 months. He rocked in the crib to the music. Radio was playing, and he kept the rhythm.
My sister was taking lessons at home with a teacher, and I'd be listening to this. And then I'd go to the piano and I'd actually start to play the thing that they were playing. And my father, he realized, this kid's got something. What should I do? He gets an audition for me at Juilliard. I walk into Juilliard, this 6.5-year-old kid. They're expecting me to play Bach or Beethoven or something. What are you going to play, Marvin? I said, I'm going to play I'm Yours. Now, these people at Juilliard have no idea what I'm Yours is. I go, they look at me and say, what else are you going to play? I said, well, I can play this in any key. And that's how I got into Juilliard.
Marvin was declared a child prodigy basically at age 4. When they saw the way that he could play, Juilliard was determined to make him the next Horowitz. That's what he was supposed to be.
I would be at home, and a friend of mine would come over from Juilliard, a brilliant pianist, Lauren Hollander. He would come over. Yeah. He'd play something, and my father would go, and, and my mother would go,
Classical music is awesome, and it touches the highest reaches of the human soul. But I can't see Marvin being contained by that. I can't see Marvin playing anything the way it should go for 30 seconds. Some creative stuff is going to come out, some wildly funny thing, some juxtaposition. He'll bring in a whole other piece of music. He'll do everything to make it Marvin without trying to make it Marvin. It just is Marvin.
I was being trained to become a concert pianist. But at a very early age, it became very clear that that would drive me crazy because every time I would go to the concert to play something, I would get so nervous. I would actually see the veins in my hands as I started to play. And I went, I can't do this. I literally am going to, I had an ulcer at a very young age because it was just too much for me.
If you're born with an outstanding gift, as Marvin was, let's face it, 6 years old, auditions for Juilliard, gets in, you're expected to take your instrument as far as you can go. And in the piano world, that's classical music. But Marvin always had one ear to his lessons and the other ear to Broadway and pop music.
My problem was that during the normal hours, I was practicing, so I was doing at Juilliard. But at Juilliard, they had double doors. The minute the 2 doors closed and I was alone and the teacher was gone, I'd be going. She'd come in, walk in with the doors. Hello, everything's fine.
Marvin was not a snob. Marvin was one of the earliest progenitors of the idea that all music is equal.
It was about what's good music. It's not necessarily what's classical music or what's pops, but is it good? He didn't see the difference.
By 8 or 9, rather early, I said to my father one day, I don't know why I'm doing all this, because the truth of the matter is I'm not going to be Horowitz. And I wanted to be, like a Cole Porter. He said to me, look, if you want to be able to write music and play your music for people, you want to be able to play it well. So therefore, I decided, okay, it'll be my little secret. I won't tell my teachers I don't want to be Horowitz. I'll just learn all this stuff and later on apply it to what I really want to do.
Marvin and I went to a professional children's school for performers, singing, dancing. And there were a few kids in school who were really talented. Marvin, I knew even then he was going to have some life in musical theater.
I was kind of gawky, skinny, and he was kind of the geeky-looking kid. We weren't the cutest people in the school at that time, but we were thrown together because of music.
We would have bazaars here in December to raise money for the school.
And so this was an opportunity for him to write 12 to 15 songs in a short amount of time. Quite astonishing for a 15-year-old child.
Nebuchadnezzar Drip, that was a character in one of his school shows. Nebuchadnezzar Drip was a movie star, very vain. He was just needy for adoration. And
Marvin gave me that part. He would play and he would talk and he would make things up and he would ask people for some ideas, some name of a song, and he would make up a song. And everything that we saw Marv do all throughout his professional career, Marv was doing back then.
One of the first songs he wrote for me was called Can You Tell Me Why I'm Lonely? I had the nerve to tell him that I didn't think the lyrics were that great. It kind of went, can you tell me why I'm lonesome? Everybody tells me that I'm lonesome. And I forgot the rest of it, but that's how it started.
So in that school, there was a fantastic guy who was one of my best friends. His name was Bobby. Bobby was dating a girl, and her name was Liza Minnelli. And we're all talking one day, and she says, I'd like to make a record and present it to my mother to show her that I really want to go into this career.
So Bobby suggested, why not have Marvin write some songs for Liza to give to her mother for a Christmas present?
Now comes Christmas. I get invited to go to play these songs at their house. And there I am with Judy Garland. I'm like saying, God, take me now because this is the greatest. Okay, now it gets better. Judy Garland says to me, she says, you know any of my stuff? And I said, Miss Garland, there is not one song that you could possibly pick that I don't know. And for the next half hour, I started playing songs for her.
He was like, oh, I played for Judy Garland. So there was no going back after this, you know. There was no going back to Mozart or to Beethoven or any of that. Although he could do that, but it's not what his passion was. He really wanted to compose, and musical theater became his real passion.
He was in love with Broadway from the moment I met him. For him, it was just magic.
I saw Damn Yankees, Pajama Game, Hello Dolly. I loved someone singing music with lyrics on a stage and how I felt about that. I'll never forget hearing Whatever Lola Wants, sitting there going, wow. Or when Carol Channing does Hello Dolly and the whole theater is ablaze. It's not just something that's on a screen and you go, bravo, bravo. It's the whole theater energizes that number.
Right after high school, our mother wrote to Bobby, Marvin just got this great job. He's going to be a rehearsal pianist for this new Broadway show.
I'm Sadie, Sadie, married lady.
A friend told me a story that he was working in Doubleday's, the old bookstore on Fifth Avenue, and a woman came in and said, my son is going to be this wonderful Broadway composer. His name is Marvin Hamlish, and right now he's a rehearsal pianist on Funny Girl. And my friend thought, yeah, Marvin Hamlish, with a name like that, yeah, you're going to be successful. So there he was, learning from the best. Julie Stein, the composer, who had just come off Gypsy, and of course, Barbra Streisand.
I met Marvin when I was 21 years old. He was only 19. We clicked immediately. Just having him around me, you know, was so joyous. I remember they used to send you out for coffee for people, and I said to you, can you get me some chocolate donuts? And you, of course, brought me 2. You became my best friend.
His training as a rehearsal pianist with Barbra Streisand helped him become that musician that really was such an improviser and so spontaneous and so willing to just go wherever that singer was going to go.
It was an incredible experience, seeing her in the flesh. And everybody knew there was not a question of that this woman was a star and that she had a great voice. And I'm thinking to myself, gee, if only one day Barbra Streisand would sing one of my songs, you know? And that became my dream.
So what was the first pop song you ever wrote that was successful?
So I will do my first big hit. Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Everything that's wonderful is what I feel when we're together. Are they allowed to applaud? Brighter than a luggage penny when you're near. The rain goes disappears near, and I feel so fine. Just to know. This song was originally written because I have a fabulous ear, nose, and throat doctor, Dr. Lester Coleman. And Dr. Lester Coleman is also my godfather. Now this is, you know, you're talking about when I was like 15, 16 years old. He has in his chair, as a patient, Quincy Jones.
The doctor says, I have a client here who's too shy to talk to you, but he has a song he'd love you to hear. And the song was Sunshine, Lollipops, and Rainbows.
The next thing you know, Quincy puts it in a film. Leslie Gore recorded it, and that was my first big hit.
He had it. I can't drive a car, but I've always been able to tell what who's got it or not, whether it's Will Smith or Oprah or Whoopi, and Marvin. And Marvin was definitely one of the ones. And soon after, got The Swimmer. I think it was one of his first scores, wasn't it? Was The Swimmer.
I was about 21 years old. I got a phone call one night. Poor woman is really screaming at me. She said, Mr. Hamlish, please, I've got this party and they got a piano. It's the first time we ever had a piano for the party. We usually use records and we want you to play the piano. I said, listen, I'm a college student. I'm a Juilliard graduate. I do not play these parties. I mean, please, you know. By the way, could you tell me, who's the party for? Because I could maybe send you somebody else. She said, oh, it's for the producer, Sam Spiegel. Now, Sam Spiegel had just done Lawrence of Arabia. He'd done On the Waterfront. I did what any Jewish American boy would do. I said, I'll be over in 10 minutes. At the end of the party, he liked what I did, and the next thing you know, they sent me out to Hollywood, and I did a picture.
Spielberg and I used to call the music emotion lotion. It is, because the music makes you feel. But a lot of things in a movie you wouldn't feel if it wasn't for music, you know. It's science and soul. All the time you're utilizing intellect and your emotion. Always. It's the most fascinating challenge in the world. Marvin got it.
I'm now in California, and I'm doing film music. Did Take the Money and Run, which was Woody Allen. Move. Move had a song that went, move, move, move. It was written with the Bergmans, Alan and Marilyn, later to give us The Way We Were. No one would have ever known that from our first song, Move. Did Koch, Life is What You Make It, like that. Then I did Bananas, who could ever forget?
My ex-wife, Louise Lassa, said that there was this great kid around, and he was very talented. And so we showed him the cut of the film, and he got it right away.
So I realized to make it in Hollywood, it's got to be a film that people see. Now I start to look for pictures that might be winners.
Like the corners of my mind, misty watercolor memories of the way we were.
When it came time to do The Way We Were and heard his name mentioned, it was like, oh God, we have to use Marvin. He was so efficient, so competent, and he never said no. I hate the word no. I love, yes, we can do that. Yes, that's possible.
The Way We Were starts out on a college campus, and they actually asked me to go to the college, and what I heard at the college were these bells. And this becomes, and then you start thinking about Barbra Streisand, and you think about those long notes that she sounds so great at.
I think it was about the way we were that he walked up to walk the first time. We talked about food, maybe more than we talked about music that first time. Restaurants, I remember. A lot about restaurants. He had such pleasure and joy in sitting down at the piano and writing.
And he could execute what he's thinking of.
Immediately.
Immediately. Goes right to the fingers and goes right to the keys.
Because he was so schooled in the discipline of music, he knew that the possibilities were almost endless. So if you don't like this, I got that. How about this one? We said to each other, if in the preview of the movie we don't hear at least a couple of sniffles at the end, then we've not really
Done the
done
job.
our job.
At the end of the picture originally, I hardly used the theme the way we were until practically the last second, because my feeling was it's getting so hokey. I mean, she's going like this to Robert Redford, and he's saying blah, blah, and please give me enough, maple syrup here. And we went to Phoenix for the first preview. And at the end of the picture just kind of died. So I called up the studio person at the time and said, I've got to redo the end cue. And they didn't want me to do the end cue over because it was going to cost about $15,000, not for me, but for the musicians. And maybe I was crazy, but I finally decided to give them back the $15,000 for my paycheck and redo that last cue because it pissed me off. I went back and redid that cue so that when she touched his hair, that blonde hair, the first thing you heard was that melody.
We heard a couple stuff. A few handkerchiefs came out.
That's a perfect example of where his head is and where his heart is. It'd be unthinkable to him that you can improve something and that you wouldn't, because of money. That's anathema to him.
And with one song, Marvin joins the pantheon of great American songwriters with that one song. A song like that takes its place in American musical history because it becomes a template for other songs rather than relying on any template that had existed before. There are a lot of songs that you could say, hey, that reminds me of The Way We Were, but The Way We Were reminds you of no other song.
You're aiming for how the song is going to serve the film. That's the first job, is to serve that film. Anything that happens outside is gravy. In this case, there was a lot of gravy.
The way we were. A couple of wrong chords, but otherwise.
Marvin, because he was born in 1944, was the quintessential member of a generation that had something that no other generation had before it, which is the invention of the long-playing record and its dissemination. By the time Marvin was 12 years old, he could go to a record store, and he did, and he could buy a recording of virtually any music that had ever existed. And as a result of that, Marvin was really one of the earliest American composers who had an absolute command of every conceivable musical vernacular. It's no surprise then that when he was going to do the Sting, he would reach back into ragtime and actually be responsible for the ragtime revival.
I literally got every piece of music Scott Joplin wrote. I put it all out on the piano and then started playing it, and slowly but surely came down to what we finally used.
We had dinner. I said, Marvin, I have a feeling you're going to win all 3 Oscars. And he said, get out of here, man. Are you crazy? I said, let's make a bet, And I bet my favorite French wine. I think it was a Chassagne Montrachet or something like that.
The winner is Marvin Hamlisch for The Sting.
Marvin, come back.
All right.
The Way We Were. The winners are?
Marvin Hamlisch and Alan Milburn.
Oh, it was so beautiful. I gave him his 3rd Oscar that night. It was Burt Bacharach and I, and he gave me the thing where it said, who won? And Marvin, of course, is in the audience, and his mother and father. And the moment I looked, I said, oh, they knew. Of course.
I feel we can talk as friends because I think I know you. Thank you all.
I have this picture of him and his mother lugging these huge cases of wine out to my house in Brentwood because I won, you know.
He catapulted into instant stardom, and every mother of a Jewish girl knew about Marvin because they all thought he would be the perfect husband for their daughters, I think.
Bob, you don't have to worry about me going all the way with Todd. I'm saving myself for my one true love, Marvin Hamlish.
And he was young. I mean, what was he? He was in his early 20s, probably.
He was 29.
It's very young to win 3 Academy Awards in one night. Stunning. It didn't change him one bit. It just enabled him to rent a Ferrari instead of a Ford when he came out, you know.
Everybody pretty soon knew who Marvin Hamlish was, very quickly after that amazing Oscar night. He was not a secret Hollywood composer.
The one and only Marvin Hamlish.
Marvin Hamlish.
Marvin Hamlish.
Mr. Hamlish?
You ever been embarrassed by the name Marvin?
Are you kidding? You think you come out of a womb and you say, Mom, do me a favor, make it Marvin?
Yeah.
I love to perform. Right. I mean, I truly, I think when they called me Hamlish, I think they put the ham in there for real. I just think they knew. I said, navel. Navel. I was sitting with my 3 Oscars in California, feeling, on one hand, very ecstatic, on the other hand, feeling that, life was going to continue. I was working on another movie, and my true love had always been, doing something in the theater. And I had befriended Michael Bennett for a long time. And he called me up and he said he had an idea and he wanted to talk to me about it.
And he comes running to New York to a little off-Broadway workshop to start working with Michael Bennett on the show. And Marvin's agent, Alan Carr, is going, Marvin, you can't do this. What are you doing? You're crazy. You're a big Oscar winner. You can't work off-Broadway.
He could have taken the safe route and done things that were commercial. He could have not left Hollywood after 3 Oscars and done films, but he came back for this musical about a bunch of dancers that had a story.
Broadway theater was his life.
You're right, the theater beckoned.
Oh, yeah.
So I go back to New York, and I come to Michael Bennett's apartment. So Michael, tell me, what do you want to do? He says, well, he says, I've recorded 24 hours worth of talks with dancers, and I think we should do a show about the chorus. Whole new idea. It's a concept called workshop. I'm just gonna start them up, see where we go. I was very, very nervous about this.
Marvin has said this many times. He said, I come from the school where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there was no beginning, middle, and it was just Michael and these ideas he had.
The first run-through was so bad that we called it the Towering Inferno, like that movie, where everybody is jumping to their death. Yeah, it was that bad.
It took me really about 7 or 8 months working on that show to figure out what are we really talking about. And then one day in rehearsal, Michael Bennett took a chalk and went wham and drew a line on the floor. And he said, that's the line that we're all behind. And all of a sudden I went, aha, I got it. The common denominator of all these people is, God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. I mean, that becomes the mantra, and the killer is, oh God, the desperation. Oh God, I need this job. I really need this job. I mean, everything now changes. It's not just about dancers and their resumes and showing off. It's, I'm desperate. I am desperate for this thing in my life. Now, people in the audience could identify with those people, even though the people in the audience weren't dancers.
I mean, it really started coming together with the music, and then each character started emerging. It was very thrilling. That's when I thought, this could be good, this could be great.
I said to Michael, who wants to know about a short girl that wanted to be a ballerina, you know? And he said, no, you're gonna be in the show, you're gonna be in the show. So I go in for Marvin to create my song. And Marvin, he said, tell me about yourself. I started to talk, and as I'm talking, Marvin's doodling on the piano, and he gets my energy, and it's da 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 dee 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 dee.
4'10", 4'10", that's the story of my life. I remember when everybody was my size.
And that's what he did with everybody. He created a theme for you know, every individual.
There is this story, Michelangelo, they asked him, how do you make an elephant? And he said, well, I take a slab of concrete, I take away everything that's not an elephant, what I'm left with is an elephant. It's the same thing with Chorus Line.
The collaborative nature on Chorus Line was so tremendous. We weren't working for the money. We were working for art. We were all making $100 a week. And we thought if we had a nice little show we could be proud of and establish ourselves as successful artists, we would be very happy.
Marvin and I, we met for lunch, and I said, just tell me about opening night. He said, yeah. Well, he said, you know, so they do the kicks, and they back into the darkness. And people are screaming and cheering because we've never seen this kind of a musical before. And everybody takes their bow. And then we took the third bow, and then it was the sixth bow. He said, 21 bows later, opening night, that's my face. He said, yeah, we ran out of language. We just were climbing over each other, stunned that the audience would not leave, period. They would not leave. And I said, what is 21 curtain calls? What is that? He said, it's 1,000 years. It's the best 1,000 years of your life.
One day, someone goes, hey, you guys, come here, look out the window. We looked out the window, and there were black limousines lined up all the way down the block. And it was Jackie Onassis, Diana Ross, Groucho Marx, Lucille Ball. I mean, everybody coming to see us, and we were going, they're coming to see us? Wow, I mean, we were like, couldn't believe it.
It exploded. All of a sudden, we had 3 national tours in London, then foreign companies in all these foreign languages, and then selling the movie rights. It just touched everybody.
The show hits very deeply at the heart, not of fame, but at the need to be up there, to live that dream in New York City. Of course he writes that show. He writes that show. The show about the people who give and give and give and get nothing in return. He writes the show about the people who aren't the stars, and it makes them stars.
New York in 1975, when the Chorus Line first opened, was in a very bad way. It was broke, it was dirty, it was crime-ridden. What else? I mean, you name it, it was bad. Chorus Line came along, and no one had ever seen a hit of this dimension. There was a whole sense of renewal, and then that led to the cleaning up of Broadway and New York.
There's only one Broadway. It's in New York.
It was a turning point. And I don't think I'm overstating it one bit, because it is, you know, the heart of the city, and it was a fulcrum for a lot of the change that took place then in the city.
I'm sure that it can't have been easy having a career in the theatre after a Chorus Line, and the fact that so many of the people with whom he would have gone on to create great work just weren't there. So many of them died.
When Michael Bennett died, it was one of the most devastating things that ever happened to him. He had more respect for Michael Bennett than anyone that I know that he knew.
I think he more than anything else kept searching for the great collaboration again.
It's never the song or the outcome that's the most important. It's the process of the collaboration. And in my lifetime, the collaboration that I had on Chorus Line was something that, you could only dream about. Now, what they taught me at Juilliard really was how to make things look very difficult.
You would never know it when you first met Marvin, the idea that he was going to be a personality, entertaining people and having them laugh. I said, no, he's just this, this Jewish kid from New York who writes songs. And suddenly he morphed into this real celebrity who was fantastic on stage.
I suspect for Marvin, his sense of humor and his innate theatricality would have made it impossible for him to become a classical virtuoso. It's just too restrictive.
He is a performer, Marvin. To be a combination of Victor Borg and Oscar Toscanini, he had that duality and that great, great gift,
You are very famous, in America anyway, for being able to write instant songs.
Yes.
Like somebody can toss you a lyric and
That's
you
right.
can instantly compose something.
That's
So
true.
Marvin seemed to move effortlessly between film and theatre and performance and all that. I don't think that he really thought of them as being different things. They were all part of one great gift he had, which was to entertain, primarily through music, but also through great humour.
Has anybody else got any great song title?
Thank God it's Friday.
That's been done. There has actually been a song.
There
There's
is?
a movie called...
Well, how about Thank God It's Monday? Most people have a crazy weekend. Wow, wow, wow. It ends around Sunday night. Part of me is a very serious, and I take it very serious, composer. And the other part of me is a very fun-loving guy who likes to have fun. I would like to be a person who can work well in both areas. That is to say, I'd like to be able to walk into a room of the musical intelligentsia of the world and be taken seriously. And at the same time, I'd like to, yes, go down to Florida and do a week at the Diplomat Hotel and just have a ball. And sometimes the two of those people in me, because I'm always constantly, sometimes, I cannot help but think about it, are feuding. I always wanted to be a rock star. I said, Monday, yeah, baby, don't you know? Oh, yeah. Dude, make it real close. Monday, yeah, 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 yeah. I said, when Monday comes around next time.
I was writing pop songs when I met Marvin. He started to talk to me about that he's going to London to score the James Bond movie, The Spy Who Loved Me. I said, if I were ever going to write a James Bond song, I would call it Nobody Does It Better. And next, on the spot, he's sitting at the piano and he's writing the melody.
When you're trying to write a hit, you think about a lot of things. One of the things we were thinking about here was, because it's a James Bond film, is get it very sexy, very double entendre, get it hot, get a hot song. But I wanted not to start like Goldfinger and all those big ones, so I started very coy, And then, of course, what was wonderful is I had Carol Bayer Sager write the lyric. It was wonderful. And we also had, when you have Carly Simon, who, as you know, is that's it,
Nobody does it better. Makes me feel sad for the rest.
The first time I met Marvin, I mistook him for a tax collector. I just had never met anybody who looked like Marvin who was in the music business, because everybody that I knew were hippies or had hair that was somehow deranged. It was a dish of a song, and I was so relieved that I liked it. wasn't Goldfinger. So I was thinking, what is this song going to be? I hope it has a sense of humor. And in fact, the song does. It really is sly. It doesn't take itself seriously.
I used to tell Marvin I loved the fade because when she'd sing James, You're the Best, you could think she's talking, clearly you think she's talking about James Bond, but she was married to James Taylor at the time. And I used to think, I wonder who she thought of when she ad-libbed that.
It was definitely James Bond, but I took advantage of the fact that I was in love with James Taylor, and so it helped me to be a method actor as I sang it and to sing it to James Taylor. When The Spy Who Loved Me was just about to open, there was a screening in New York, and James and I went, and Marvin was there, and just at the end of Roger Moore's jumping off and the song starting to play, the lights all went off, the electricity all went off in the theater. That was the blackout. And we trudged home to my apartment, which was the closest, and we all spent the night there. The apartment was hot and cluttered. We were all sleeping on the floor, and Marvin played the piano well into the night. It was so much fun. He played everything, from Bernstein to Copland to all of his own material, and we just were pouring ice down our backs and listening to Marvin play. It was great. You just can't even believe that so much life could be in one person.
My life right now is a C major chord with a C sharp stuck in the middle, meaning the C sharp doesn't fit with a C major chord. I think the reason I can't say, isn't it great, Chorus Line will be the longest running show, isn't that terrific? No, that's not terrific enough. It was my first show. I've got to be able to get better. The work that I did in Chorus Line was good work. I want to be able to attain that kind of standard. I want to be able to continue to do that.
Do you still get the thrill of hearing your stuff live or on the radio? I mean, if one of your tunes come on or in the club.
That's so egotistical, and I don't, as you know, I'm kind of a...
So if you hear something of yours,
no,
you
it
think,
doesn't mean a thing to me anymore, because it's, I mean...
Is that really true? I mean, I find...
Oh my God, I can't believe it. Even here in London, at this theater, wherever I go, oh, they're playing my song. Oh yeah, they're playing my song. And when they're playing my song, everybody's gotta shh, shh, shh. Don't say a word now, listen to that sweet melody.
Like any hugely successful composer, he wants to repeat his last success. And to follow Chorus Line is a daunting prospect, completely daunting prospect. And it's pretty hard to imagine you could duplicate.
I auditioned in California, and he was there with Neil Simon, and I got the part. Marvin and Carol Sager, his partner and girlfriend, were meeting with Neil to do a musical of The Gingerbread Lady.
And Neil got bored with that story when he was watching the two of them try to write it. He thought, this is more entertaining than anything we've tried to do with I want to write that story.
So he asked Marvin if he could take me to lunch. And Neil, he said, how would you feel about a musical about you and Marvin? So I thought, oh, well, that sounds fine to me. Sure, go ahead. So Marvin and I started writing the songs for their Playing Our Song. It was just so pleasurable to write with Marvin because he was so brilliantly talented. And then to have it become the success that it became, it was just a great experience. The only thing that wasn't wonderful is we were not really getting along in the way that Neil Simon had us getting along on Broadway. I used to tell people when they would ask me that if Edward Albee had written it, it would have come out like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf with songs, In fact, the last few months of our relationship, we just stayed together to finish the show.
he was miffed that as good as this show was and how much people love this show, it was the same year as Sweeney Todd and Sondheim's big, dramatic hit, which of course won everything.
After the show opened, I think Marvin, he was a little lost. When you're at that level of success, that young, and you have a whole life still ahead of you, I'm sure that it plays on you. He could go very dark. I'd noticed that he wouldn't look happy, he'd just be somewhere else. He never really talked about it. I don't know. I think he struggled with who he was, what his place was. And then I guess he just hit a patch of bad luck.
Well, right now I'm kind of excited because I've just completed music on 2 shows. I've been writing for 2 shows.
Two Broadway
shows, which will be produced
Whoa,
in 1983.
Marvin.
One is based on the film Smile. Then I've got another show called Gene, the life of Gene Seberg. And we are looking forward to both of them coming out in 1983.
Well, you are busy.
So I was a little busy on that.
Unfortunately, none of them seem to gel for him. The shows didn't gel for one reason or the other, and it's always hard to pinpoint what the mistakes were.
He took chances with shows like Gene and Smile, but it got harder and harder to have hits on Broadway, and I think he got a little depressed after a while, like, boy, what do you have to do, kind of a thing, right? But he never complained to me about his career. He joked about it, and joking is usually the funny way to say, this sucks.
I saw him really sad sometimes. That energy that he had, that he was kind of like a top, and it was so vibrant and so like I don't know, what would you call it, like a flame that went like this. But then he would just sometimes get into the limo, and he would just...
I have not had a hit song for quite a long time right now. I sometimes have the fear, have the songs that have become the most famous for me, are those over? What's a composer? A composer is a man who's giving, or a woman who's giving birth all the time. And you'd like that to have acceptance. So you start to feel like, gee, nobody likes this, and nobody liked that, and nobody bought this. What's wrong here?
After Lily died, I remember bumping into him, and he said, he almost instinctively goes to a payphone as soon as he lands, and she's not with us anymore.
His mother was so important to him. She loved him so much and was so proud of him. And with that kind of unconditional love, Marvin was able to grow up, I think, with a talent, but still know that he was loved as a person.
Who's your favorite composer?
The Truth.
The Truth.
Gershwin. That's the second.
When my mother died, I was totally alone. I mean, I was just alone. You know, it's like, oh my God. My mother and I were, some people would say we're too close, but my mother and I were just about as close as you can get. And you're caught in this business in a very tight situation. Who are you going to tell to? Who are you going to talk to? If you talk to the press and say, I'm so lonely, they're going to say, hey, give it a break, you know, please. You got a big hit show, you won a Pulitzer Prize, you can't be lonely. But I was.
After the loss of Marvin's mother, the thing that kept him going was his love and integrity for the music. He threw himself into his work, and it resulted in an extremely prolific time for him. Out of it came a huge body of work and film scores.
Don't let this feeling end. It's everything I am.
I remember Marvin talking about the melody, watching the ice skater, the beautiful ice skater doing her axels and her figure eights and stuff, and that da 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 da, all that melody just started to fall out of him.
But you know, this was about an ice skater, okay, this film. And I kept thinking about, because I don't ice skate, but I kept thinking about, if you're in an ice skating ring, I always see those people go around, they go, zoom, you know, zoom, okay? And for some reason, that if you take that and you actually put that on a piano, you get, zoom, zoom. And that's how the thing started to be written.
Wow.
They asked me to sing the song, and we recorded it, and it was a very simple session. It took a couple of hours, and it was done. And then the movie came out, and then people just loved this. People were getting married in droves to this song.
I sang at weddings and bar mitzvahs at a very early age. The thing is, with these kind of gigs, you have to know hundreds of songs, and I only knew like 12. And one of the songs was Ice Castles. It's so funny, I forget the lyrics to songs all the time on stage in the most important shows. And that song I could sing, and just, I'll know the words. I haven't sung it in forever. His music is so accessible to people and speaks to the heart, and yet he has such training and such a facility.
As a composer-songwriter, you can have all the technical skills you want. But if you don't know how to write with heart, it never connects to the world. He was able to take the technical side and not let it get in the way of the music that was coming through his heart. Because his melodies are sweet, they're endearing, they're instantly recognizable, but they come from a very deep well.
His music is incredibly complex, actually, in a lot of ways. It's hard to tell that sometimes because it's so accessible. One of the real marks of his genius was his music was so smart without ever making you feel stupid when you listen to it.
It sweeps and it soars and it communicates great beauty and sort of hope and a childlike sweetness, which is obviously packed with complexities. It touches you in a very extraordinarily raw place.
I'm in the middle of nowhere in Spain getting ready to start shooting Che. And as part of an attempt to kind of lighten our mood, I brought along a DVD of Bananas to watch before we started shooting Che. And I was loving the score all over again. And my producer, he said, you know, we should get Marvin to do the score for The Informant.
You're sort of curious when you're watching the movie and saying to yourself, wow, the score isn't like other scores. The score doesn't seem to be doing what most scores typically do. That's because the score isn't for the audience. The score is actually inside Mark Whitaker's head. It's Mark Whitaker's score for his own life. The movie, for me, wouldn't work without the score. It's so central to you understanding Mark Whitaker's mindset. Probably the most exciting part was the recording of the music and watching Marvin conduct. It was like watching the best figure skater in the world do flawless triple axels every 8 minutes for 8 hours a day, days on end. I remember at one point they're playing this piece and he goes, stop, stop, stop. He says, guitar on the 24th bar, first beat, what chord are you playing? And the guy goes, I'm playing E minor. He goes, it should be E minor 7th. Change that, you know. So Marvin, there were 30 instruments playing, and Marvin is hearing a single string on a single instrument, you know, one stroke of this guy's, like, that's how detailed his ear is. That was I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. It was really fun to watch.
I had bought the idea that the more successful you are, then obviously the more happy you would get. But I was getting lonelier by the minute, and the work was terrific and I enjoyed it, but it didn't seem to finally give me the part of my life that I wanted.
He was quite a ladies' man. He had some wonderful relationships with beautiful women. He loved the girls, and they loved him.
I think his parents wanted him to marry a nice Jewish girl. I think it's the last thing Marvin wanted.
Marvin and I dated briefly. I'm talking so brief, you have no idea. But during their playing our song, he was single, I was single. Why not? You go out with Marvin Hamlisch, you know. But we realized we did not want to be sweethearts. We made each other giggle. It was like, oh, stop, I can't kiss you. Shut up, just go play.
The relationships just never seemed to work out. And, you know, show business, it can only give you so much, and you need that other force, you need that other person. And he just couldn't find it until Terry came along.
I was living in Los Angeles, and the lady that came in to help clean my house said, I think this is terrible, that you're not married, and said, my sister's working for somebody who seems fairly nice.
Out of the blue, I start talking to a girl on the phone that I was set up with, you know, on a phone conversation, and all of a sudden, that put the smile on my face.
The first time that we spoke on the phone, I asked him where he was, and he said, oh, I'm in Virginia somewhere, and I'm buying summer shirts on sale. And I tuned in that night, and he was at the White House. Who does that? Who doesn't brag? And that was what hooked me.
You know, here's a person I'm speaking to on the phone for many, many months. I have not met her. We're just discussing life and us.
We spoke on the phone sometimes 4 hours, 6 hours. Sometimes we fell asleep with the phone in our hand.
If you can talk on a daily basis with someone for hours on a phone and you still are looking forward to the next conversation, then you got something.
We had spoken on the phone for months and months, and then Marvin said, well, why don't we meet? And so I flew east and went to the hotel, and he was standing outside the door, and I was very, very nervous because I had never met him in person. So I had this questionnaire, and I put the questionnaire on the outside of the door that said, fill out the questionnaire before entering. And I said, do you love the girl behind the door? Is the girl behind the door the most beautiful girl in the world to you? Does the girl behind the door spell her name with an E or an I? And does the girl behind the door love her Marvin with all her heart? He answered all the questions right. And then he said, sight unseen, will you marry me?
I just was able to see her with that other part of me, you know, where I didn't need to see her with this, I needed to see her here, you know?
I said yes. My mother thought I was out of my mind. She did not know who Marvin Hamlisch was. She knew of a Marvin Hagler. So when I explained to her no, that he was actually a composer and pianist, her words, my mother's words were, just what this family needs, an out-of-work piano player.
The way that he looked at her, I knew this was going to be the love of his life. She was like a lifesaver for him. It's great that you love the masses and give it out to the world, but you have to have something in your soul. He needed to fill his soul, not only from the music, but from another human being giving him back the love.
I learned that no matter how successful I got, it didn't bring me any more happiness, and that happiness had to come from another place. I realized, be careful that you don't get so involved in trying to make it in whatever it is that you lose sight of what life is really about.
I used to say these were the priorities of Marvin's life: music, Yankees, me. The Yankees were so important to him that when we got married, the gift I gave him was Yankee Fantasy Camp, because when he entered Juilliard, they wanted to protect his hands. So I thought he needed to live life. He was in outfield and he was going to catch a ball, and the team ran out of the dugout and screamed, "Marvin, no, spare your hands." But he caught it and he was in heaven.
In the old days, before smartphones, if it was playoff time, messages were being relayed from the side door of the stage onto the stage. There would be somebody, pointing. And then
he loved his Yankees, loved it, and really loved Joe Torre.
He's my greatest fan because anytime we lost games, it was always somebody else's fault. It was never my fault. I was a Broadway freak as a kid. Then, of course, you knew who Marvin Hamlisch was. So I was at batting practice, turn around, and I said, "That's Marvin Hamlisch." You're standing there in the dugout. I was outside the dugout. And I went over and, introduced myself to him. I just, you always try to be cool. You don't want to get too excited. You know he's famous, but once you find out who the guy is behind that reputation, you realize you're such a caring person. It didn't matter what kind of mood you were when you were in his company. When you left, you were in a better mood.
I will play for you Happy Birthday as if you were being feeded by other composers. Like, for instance, let's say Bach was around. Mozart. Beethoven.
So I went to the Yankees and I asked for permission to have a World Series ring made for Marvin Hamlisch, which, my ring is right here and it's got my name Torre on it. Well, his has Hamlisch on it. It's like he was part of the ball club. So we went to dinner and I said, "I got a little something for you." And there it was.
If the piano hadn't been in the house, I would have been what I wanted to be, which was the right fielder for the Yankees, but it didn't work that way.
And then there was his passion for food. Marvin was a total foodie. And of course, everything when it comes to food was a superlative. This is the best restaurant with the best dessert, with the best everything.
Oh my gosh, you gotta have this. This is the best. We're gonna have 2 of those.
This is the best mashed potatoes in New York.
The best cheeseburgers is this place in Seattle.
They got the best seafood in town.
The best ice cream in the whole wide world.
He would find something that he didn't know about, and he wanted everybody to know.
It was tartufo in Rome.
Crabs that had just left the water.
Salt beef sandwiches.
Swedish meatballs.
He's the one who introduced me to Krispy Kreme.
But we have to get the soup there, but we got to get the salad here.
He ordered every single dessert on the menu.
The cakes and the cookies.
Apple pie.
Frozen yogurt.
Grater's ice cream.
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
You like gelato, kid? I go, yeah, I love gelato. I know a place. We'll go after the concert.
His love for food was like his love for life. He wanted to taste everything, he wanted to experience everything, he wanted to do everything, and he had a lust for life where he dug in.
For a long time after Chorus Line, I was doing a lot of, quote, musical comedy shows. But musical comedies for me never felt like I was using my musical abilities on 4 engines. I always said I felt like a Porsche that was in the garage. And when I was about 52, 53, I said, the next show I do, I want it to be, quote, important. Meaning, I don't care how long it runs. I just want to know that out there in the world will be a piece of music that I can honestly say is my best work, that I gave it my 4 engines.
I was very pleased that he wanted to do something that had body and heft and weight to it.
Sweet Smell is based on the great noir film of the 50s, the New York showbiz film. Tough stuff, very harsh stuff for a Broadway musical.
We were aware that it was, in some respects, a challenge to the commercial Broadway audience because it was cynical. So I was skeptical, but it was talking to Marvin, hearing some of his musical ideas that turned me on to it.
He gave it all these different kind of hallucinogenic colors. It was such an entertainment, but a sort of drunken late night entertainment. His music was like people spinning out of control.
I cannot begin to think about how many songs in that score are just so moving. I Cannot Hit a City is a song that is so perfect to indicate what New York was like in the 50s. I really feel the mood of the city. In fact, I even feel that it's just rain and the rain has dried. There's something about it that's in the music there. And when a composer could do that with the music, he's really succeeded.
With Marvin, he'd get a musical idea, and then there was no disconnect between what he might want to invent and what his hands did. Most of us will have an idea and we'll think, what is that? How do I do that? There was nothing like that. It was just straight stuff coming out. It was astounding to watch and to be in the room with, and I always was in the room when he was inventing.
Based on the players involved, I felt, in the words of George Tenet, it was a slam dunk. You know, I thought this is, there's no way that this can't work.
It got a withering review from the New York Times. In any conventional sense of the word, it was a Broadway failure.
I didn't expect Sweet Smell of Success to run 10 years. It's not a show that has got tons of laughter. It's not a show that children can come to. But I thought there is something here.
This show opened 6 months after 9/11. It opened probably at the wrong time. It opened at a time when the Broadway audience wanted reassurance. So I think that might have been one of the reasons. It's very disappointing.
I always felt Marvin, this was harder on Marvin than anybody, because he was the most proud of this. Probably the most proud of anything he'd done since Chorus Line. You know, it's a hard business.
My God, I don't understand why the critics were so tough. The Sweet Smell of Success was a smart musical. You can put out a piece of junk out there, and everybody says, oh, it's so bad, it's good. Oh, it's such fun. You know, and I mean, that type of thing happens all the time. And the people who write and aim low get away with it, while the people who aim high, as Marvin did with Sweet Smell of Success, get penalized. There's no question the Sweet Smell of Success will be redeemed someday. So many musicals have a tough time of it their first time out, and they're not appreciated. And it takes the public and the critics a while to catch up with them. I do believe that its redemption is inevitable.
You asked me before whether he had any sense of never living up to his early successes. I don't think he thought that way. He was thrilled by the creative process and by sharing music with people. He was genuinely excited. I don't think he measures his current success with his past success. I don't think he thinks of it in terms of success. I think he thinks of it in terms of joy. Because he really, music gave him joy.
I see in this business a lot of people who've received a lot of acclaim and a lot of awards, and all they want to do is experience that again. They want it to happen again. And I've never understood that. And I know Marvin's attitude about it was, that was great, but what's next?
I never said to myself, oh God, this is terrible and I'm going to shoot myself, or that's it. No. You go up to bat in a ball game Sometimes you strike out, sometimes you hit a home run, sometimes you hit a double. One of the reasons that I kind of have had a successful career is that I just kept going.
It's time to tear through the door. It's time now to soar. So let my life story start.
Marvin was really one of the kindest, most generous people I've ever met. It sounds a little cliched when you say that about somebody, and I understand why it would sound like that, but in the case of Marvin, it really is true.
He did a lot of things people never heard about. He would go to a senior citizen nursing home or assisted living home and play the piano for 20 or 30 senile, elderly people. No press release, nothing. He just had the time, he'd drop in.
As famous as Marvin became, and as demanding as his career, he never forgot people. Always giving, always generous, always doing something to give to other people. It was something that cannot be exaggerated.
I met Marvin about 6 years ago. I was in the middle of a rehearsal in London. The phone rang and it was Marvin.
What happened was we were in the car actually in the mountains, and Marvin hears Maria Friedman sing on the radio. He actually drives off the road and he said, "Who just sang that song?" And you know, it's Sirius Radio where you can find, and he's going, "Tell me now, tell me now."
And then he tracked down my agent, phoned me up, as I'm saying, directly, and then flew me out to New York to sing with the New York Philharmonic, with Liza Minnelli, Joel Grey, Jennifer Holliday. He was extraordinary. When I was ill, it wasn't common knowledge. I kept it very quiet. And I was doing concerts with Marvin, and I was having chemotherapy, so I lost all my hair. So I phoned him up and said, "Marvin, I'm really sorry. I will be wearing a wig because I'm having chemotherapy." He said, "Can you sing?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Fine." That was it. And then 3 weeks later, I broke my leg in 3 places. And so I had to phone him up and say, "Marvin, you know I'm bald. Well, I'm now also wearing a weight-bearing boot because I've broken my leg in 3 places." And there's this sort of silence, and he just said, "For God's sake, pull yourself together." And then he said, "Can you sing?" And I said, "Yes, but I really, really think that perhaps you should replace me." And he said, "No way." And everybody else cancelled my concerts. Not chancing insurance and this and that and the other, all gone. The only person. So in a year where you're, frightened and lost, he was there, which was incredible. And you don't forget those things.
Here comes Marvin.
Marvin dedicated the last 2 decades of his life to keeping the music of the great American composers alive. Gershwin, Porter, Rodgers and Hammerstein.
I'm kind of like on a crusade right now to make sure that these arts have a way to live. I mean, I want to make sure that when I die, people will know that there were a Lerner and Loewe. Yeah. They existed. Cole Porter was really there. Richard Rodgers. I worry about this. I actually worry about this. I'd like to do some music now from one of the most beautiful shows, Lerner and Loewe, the music from Camelot.
Marvin worked tirelessly to build audiences around the country. A lot of these symphonies were going bankrupt, and they were scrambling to stay relevant in today's world. And Marvin was very aware of this, and he took that on him.
Marvin loved when he would see in the front row a parent with a child. He would stop the show and make it a point about, you see this world, this is very good. I applaud you, parent.
He was always doing community outreach programs. He was always going to the schools. He wanted children to be exposed to music that would transform their lives in some way, but also teach them what's good. He also had a very special relationship with all the White Houses from Carter through the Obamas. Marvin was the go-to guy when they wanted to put on something representing our country and music. You know, he didn't have to do that, but he thought he could make a difference.
And while I still have the time, I'll stop and savor each drop of time. Taste every flavor and never rest, never sleep, but ever keep my vow this way.
We had been writing the score for Nutty Professor, and one morning we were getting together. First thing he said to me was, "You really got to have a song in this musical that just tells people that you have to appreciate absolutely every moment of life that you're given, that you need to acknowledge it and realize how fleeting it is." He instantly sat down and wrote this soaring, heartbreaking, valiant melody. And I heard the phrase, "while we still have the time," in the melody.
So many roads that branch in all directions.
I thought to myself, I wonder what's prompted the urgency of what Marvin was telling me. It wasn't just something that lay dormant in the book of the musical. It was something coming from Marvin.
Right before he died, he was in his most prolific and creative period. He just completed Nutty Professor for the stage. He had finished Steven Soderbergh's Behind the Candelabra score. He was working on the Broadway adaptation of the movie Gotta Dance. And he had just finished writing his children's book, Marvin Makes Music. He was taking on the Pops directorship of the Philadelphia Orchestra, in addition to his work as Pops conductor Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Dallas, Pasadena, Seattle, and San Diego. And he was really looking forward to conducting the New York Philharmonic's New Year's Eve concert. And then
And I will learn it all and be it all and see it all. Love a lot and like as not, I'll lose it all. I'll laugh until I've had my fill while I still have the time, my time.
If I have a choice for you to play one song, the one that would probably tell you more about me than any song that you could play is If You Really Knew Me. And there's a line in there that I think is the key to me.
Does the man make the music? Does the music make this man? And am I everything I try so hard to be?
At heart, he was happiest when he was sitting at a piano and creating. That's when he really was happiest.
I've often thought that music was just the vehicle that happened to contain his love and exuberance and zest for life and his caring.
I can't think of anyone who didn't love Marvin. He was just this generous, funny, witty, brilliant person.
He made me appreciate what music can do. I will miss that the most.
Getting Marvin Hamlisch as a collaborator and, more importantly, as a friend was like running away and being adopted by the circus. And life without Marvin is sort of like the circus has left town.
He gave a lot of joy, and he experienced a lot of joy. And what could be better than that?
I'm watching Cisco pitter-pat. Said, I can do that. I can do that. Bye, 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 bye.
I'm afraid to fly, and I don't know why.
Only got me to blame, and now I'm falling, falling, falling fast again. True love and beautiful music.
Kiss today goodbye, the sweetness and the sorrow.
I'm not a singer. Memories. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Something lost, something rare. That's how I say goodbye.
One step in the air, one me, you.
That I can do, bop, bop, bop. I can do that, da-da-da-da, bop, bop.
To learn more about Marvin Hamlisch and other American Masters, visit pbs.org/American Masters or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr. Marvin Hamlisch is available for $24.99 plus shipping. To order, call 1-800-336-1917 or write to the address on your screen.